Hello, welcome to this DCS A-10C II tutorial. In this video, I will cover basic startup. As far as startup goes, the real basic startup is extremely easy. There's not too many steps to it. But as we progress in utilizing more systems and weapons of the airplane, we'll add in a few more steps to the startup. This is just what you generally need to do until we get to the point of utilizing those specific weapons. All right, let's go ahead and get in the cockpit and get started. I will, just like all of the other startup videos, I'll have a small checklist that you can utilize to help you out as you're learning. That will be in the description of this video. All right, so to start, let's go ahead and hit our Autostart and then open our rearming window. Choose your livery board number. Give yourself 240 of both your chaff and flares. And on pylon 10, let's throw a targeting pod. And on pylon 1, let's throw the ALQ-184 ECM pod. We'll cover both of these in greater detail in later videos, but for now, this is generally what you're going to be having on your plane all the time, so we'll throw that on there. For the ECM pod, we want to use the 184 because it's the more modern one. You can just ignore the 131. Now for our fuel, we're actually going to bring this down to about, as you're learning, probably 55 to 50%. As you become more experienced, I like to put it down to about 45%. This thing can loiter a long time, and you're better served having that extra weight from the lack of fuel for munitions. Alright, after we have done that, we can come down to our right hip, and there's a switch down here that says Scorpion HMCS Power. We are going to right click to put that forward to the on position. Once that is in the on position, we're going to wait a little bit. And once our right-hand display goes to this page here, where you see it says align, and it's going through all this good information, we will press the stat button, and then go to the HMCS button. And all we're going to do is cycle down this list with the down arrow and change this option that says OCLD to on if it's available, and if on is not available, we'll put it to norm. If norm is not available, then we'll have it on OCLD. So right now we are on crosshair. I'm going to click it to on, down, next one, on. This one does not have a norm option, so I'll leave it on OCLD. Norm. And I'm just going to go straight through the list. We want on priority, norm after that if on is not available, and if norm is not available, OCLD. Going through the entire list, this is allowing us to see things in our helmet no matter where we look. And when you're at the bottom of the list, you won't have a down arrow anymore. And you can see all of these options we set are now all on. I'll go back up through the list. And the ones that don't have on available are now occluded or norm. And now you see we can see our helmet display no matter where we look. We'll go into more detail on all of these systems later on, but this is just a basic startup. At some point during the startup, it's going to kick you out of this page and move it to another page. If you're not fast enough to set all of these options before it does that, you can just get back into this page by hitting Stat and then the HEMIX HMCS button at the top. All right, here's what I was talking about. It'll kick you out. At this point, you just wait. You'll see down here, it has an asterisk next to this load all, and no asterisks along any of these other options. Once it finishes, it had a little dot, and then it kicked you out to this page. At this point, if you were not finished with the HEMIX page, you can go back into it now. So I could press Stat, HEMIX, and continue on. I'll get back to here by pressing CDU. And once again, I'll cover in more detail in later videos where it's relevant what all of this does. Alrighty, now that the plane is finished with that interruption there, I'm going to come down to my arm switches. I'm going to flip laser arm to arm, targeting pod to on, gun pack to arm. I will leave master arm in safe until I am done with takeoff. After I've done all of that, assuming the ground crew has said our rearm is complete, I'm going to go to the load page on the left. If it was not up, you would just click this button that says go to load page. And once this page is up, okay, the plane interrupted, so I'll go to the load page, load, and then I'll click the load all button. And it's going to go through a loading process where it'll tell the plane what we actually have on the plane. After every single time you rearm your aircraft, you'll need to come into this load page on your left-hand display, hit load, and then load all. And then you'll wait until you see all of the dots. All right, the dots popped up. That means our plane has finished the load all. And if I click DSMS, this is our stores management system page. It will now show us what is on our aircraft's pylons. We have our ALQ-184 jammer on pylon 1 and our lightning targeting pod on pylon 10. At this point, Autostart is finished and I'm good to roll. There'll be a lot less waiting on actual full combat startups because you'll be working in your Dismiss page, your stores management page, and setting up all of your weapons. In addition to setting up your targeting pod on your right-hand page with this targeting pod button. But we'll cover that in more detail on each of those applicable weapon systems videos. So at this point, if I wanted to go, I would go to my flaps, put them in the middle position for a maneuver. And here we have a takeoff trim button. I'll press and hold that for a second, release it, and that will set our plane to takeoff trim. All right, that is basic startup. I will go ahead and do that one more time just to give you an example. But once again, this really basic startup is nothing complex. You're basically just turning on your helmet and then loading your plane. Once you're actually utilizing weapon systems, then your startup becomes a little bit more involved, and we'll cover that later. So I'll go ahead and start my auto start. Select your loadout. Targeting pod on 10, jammer on 1. And you can put these on other pylons, but I find this to work best for me. just for the munitions you're able to put on the other pylons. Like you can put your pods on other pylons, like you could put a jammer on 2, but I prefer 10 and 1. Alright, after that, I'll come down to my Scorpion Hemix power switch, right click, move it to the on position, and then I'm waiting for the plane to get power.
Rearming complete.
You'll see in the description checklist for startup, I'll have extra steps that are not listed here. That's going to be designed for an actual combat startup to help you out. So if you see a step you don't recognize, just ignore it until we get to that point. This is going to be just for your basic get up and running so you can practice your takeoffs and landings. And then once we get into weapons, once again, we'll cover it in more detail and then add into it. All right, we're at the align page on our right display, so I'll go down to Stat, Hemix, and then go through and turn all of the options to on. If on is not available, I'll turn it to norm. If norm is not available, I'll put it to OCLD for occluded. Right, that's all done. So at this point, if our rearming was complete, I could go down to our left display, hit load, and then load all. If rearming was not complete, you just wait till it was, and then you could do this. Since I hit load all, I'm waiting for the dots to reappear along this left-hand side to let me know that it is done loading. Alright, the dots have reappeared, so I know it's done loaded. I'll go to my stores page, the Dismiss, to make sure everything is actually on the plane and recognized. I see my ALQ and my lightning pod. And then after that, I'll come down to my arming switches. I'll go ahead and arm my laser, gun pack, and turn my targeting pod on. At this point, I'm all set up, so I'll bring my flaps to the maneuver position for takeoff, and press the takeoff trim button for about 1 or 2 seconds. And then I'm good to go. Alright, that covers everything for a very bare bones startup. On the next video, I will cover taxi, takeoff, and landing. Thanks for watching.